Hey everybody, this is Josh Runquist here for Heavy Debriefings, and it's time to go over my top 10 albums of 1997. But before we do, I just want to thank everybody for the influx of brand new subscribers, views, shares, all of that stuff. It really means a lot to me. I'm definitely going through a rough time as of late. Well, granted, I've been going through a rough time since I was 12. Mental health. But it means a lot to see that people are enjoying what I do, checking out what I'm doing, and sharing the love. So just wanted to say that and, just keep it going. If you like what I do, like, comment, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff here on YouTube. Truly, I thank you. And coming in at number 10 is Sevendust with their self-titled debut. Yes, I am a huge fan of Sevendust, and I never really talk about it. And I really should more. I mean, I've even interviewed John from Sevendust before, and it's something that I should not be ashamed of, nor should you if you enjoy Sevendust. They write heavy, catchy songs, and sometimes that's all you really need. And it goes all the way back to 97 with their very first album, and of course, the first song that so many people of my generation, Black. It is such a great song. And it really sent a great precedent for what the band was all about. Great heavy crushing riffs, great pop sensibilities in the choruses for the most part, and just really strong structures. Can't stress that enough when you want a good, balanced song, is to make sure everything is structured perfectly. And that's what Sevendust does so very, very well. And they are that band that borders the line of heavy metal, alternative, and a little bit of pop, but all of that groove thrown in between. Seriously, it's a band for everybody, if you just give them the chance. And, I wouldn't say this is the first album to really start off with it, and who knows, maybe I'll do a backwards marathon on Sevendust one day. But I think this is a good one to check out. Maybe not the first, but a good one to check out. Coming in at number 9 is Stradivarius with Visions. And it's not often that you can say about a band that their 7th album is their breakout album, or potentially even their best album, but I think that is truly the case on both ends for Stradivarius. The band created so much good music, and it only got better up to this point, but Visions is that crown jewel of what power metal, melodic power metal, neoclassical metal, symphonic metal, it just is perfect for what they're trying to accomplish. A huge part of that is Jens Johansson, or Jens Johansson, depending on how you pronounce it. And unlike that ill-fated episode of That Metal Show with Eddie Trunk, Hammerfall? Is that the name of the band Jens Johansson's in? Hammerfall? No. It is Stradivarius, Eddie. It is Stradivarius. And I just really love everything about this album. I mean, Black Diamond is one of the greatest power metal songs of all time, and if you've never checked it out, you should. Unless you are deathly afraid or really hate power metal, you can't go wrong with this album. It's just got everything. It might sound a little dated because of the synth patches, which is something that I talk about all the time. I know there's a lot of bands who would love to be able to go back and change their synth patches for their keyboard sounds, especially in the late 80s, early 90s, because you could only do so much with a keyboard and computer back in the time. Even if it does sound a little dated, it sounds absolutely perfect for the time, and I can always spin this and come back to it, and every time I listen to it, I remember why Stradivarius is one of the great names in power metal, and why Visions is their best album. At number 8, we have Emperor with Anthems to the Wilkin at Dusk. Long name, but a fantastic album. And Emperor was one of the first bands to really show off the symphonics of black metal. They prove that it doesn't just need to be really dingy recordings sounding as terrible as possible. Everything can sound better than you expect it to. That's why I feel like every Emperor album just gets better than the next, even if many people disagree with me. But the second sophomore album from Emperor really shows off more of the progression of where the band would eventually end. They got a little proggier, a little more symphonic, but of course that pure black metal sound that you love of that second wave black metal sound. And of course, this is the second of only 4 albums that Emperor only ever put out. You would think with a a band as big as Emperor would have this vast catalog, but really, it's just 4 LPs and a bunch of other material that doesn't really count. But this is where I feel like the band really got in the right direction. I mean, of course, the debut is the debut. A little hard for me to listen to because Faust is playing on there, but Triumph is playing throughout the rest of the band here. And I really love what he does with his drumming style, and he inspired so many musicians in the black metal genres. And of course, you got Isan, who is one of the greatest musicians of extreme metal. And again, when you listen to this album, you can tell there's so much more he wants to incorporate with black metal. And he does that, and he continues to do that to this day. But once again, I feel like this is the album where it's that perfect balance of just about going into more than black metal and that pure black metal sound. And if you've never checked it out, and you are a black metal fan, you need to rectify that immediately. Number 7 is Symphony X with Divine Wings of Tragedy. And as much as I love Symphony X, I truly do, I feel like this is the first album where the band truly found their sound and what they wanted to be able to accomplish going forward. That's not to say the previous material wasn't any good, that is not true, but Divine Wings of Tragedy was just perfect for the time. And it's still hard for me to believe that this came out in 97, because this really feels like it was ahead of its time. This feels like a 2000s album. But no, this was all the way back in 97. It's got that perfect blend of symphonic metal, power metal, progressive metal, neoclassical. I mean, Michael Romeo is one of the best guitarists in metal, and he doesn't get talked about enough, and that is a crying shame. Of course, Russell Allen with his soaring vocals, whether he's going low or those amazing near operatic highs. He's got it all in strides. And some of my favorite songs from Symphony X are on this album, and I just love everything that they were able to accomplish here. Is it cheesy? Oh, you bet. Like, when you think of progressive metal and power metal and how cheesy it gets, Symphony X hits both of those perfectly. But if you couldn't tell by my stature, I am a cheese eater, and I will gobble that up for days. I love this album, and I just love that so many bands were inspired by this album. I love that this is the point where Symphony X really started to find their sound, and it only got better from here on out. I can't wait to see what that new Symphony X is going to sound like. Maybe in 2023, maybe 2024, we'll see what happens. But in the meantime, why don't you revisit this one if you've checked it out, or if you haven't checked it out, and you want to see what the progressive power metal scene was all about, check out Divine Wings of Tragedy. Number 6, we got Nightwish with Angels Fall First. The debut album from Nightwish, and started off as a gigantic explosion of gothic, symphonic, and power metal bands that would surely come. And of course, when you got Tarja on vocals, you can't go wrong. Yes, this album is full of cheese, as every single Nightwish album is, and just like we talked about with Symphony X, I am a cheese eater, and I love what's going on here. I mean, this was almost kind of like a bare bones Nightwish album, especially compared to albums that would come out later, but I still love everything that they were able to incorporate here. You got a little bit of folk metal going on here, you got the symphonics, Tomas's amazing whimsical sound. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why Nightwish spawned so many bands inspired by them, and Angels Fall First is probably the biggest reason why that started happening, because after Nightwish you started seeing so many more of these bands like them, and there's a good reason for that. This album is awesome from start to finish. And no, that's not a pun saying finish. Wink wink, nudge nudge. But seriously folks, if you've never checked out Nightwish, I think this is a fantastic album to start with. Start from the beginning and see what you like about it. Seriously, check it out. Oh, I can already feel people getting very upset with this one, and that just makes me happy. Number 5 is Him with their debut album Greatest Love Songs Volume 666. And I love half of Him's discography. Half of it sucks, and it really sucks hard. But the other half is fantastic, and this is a great example of that. It's got that gothic metal sound, near doom metal sounds, especially in the guitar tones and everything that they're able to pull off. Like, if they were singing about just death instead of love, I don't think Him would get anywhere near the amount of bullcrap that they always got. And Ville Valo just had an amazing voice back then, and you can hear it all the way here, and while A few of the songs on this album did turn out on Razorblade Romance, which, wink wink, nudge nudge, once again, that will be showing up in a future list, so feel free to get mad about that. I love the original versions even more. They sounded darker, they sounded heavier, they sounded doomier. I love the guitar tone on this album, and I don't often talk about guitar tone on an album, but this just does it for me. Whether they're doing their original songs, whether they're doing covers, doesn't matter, it just works from start to finish. And again, no pun intended, with another Finnish band. Him is a great band, and I wish they got more recognition that they got from peers that deserve to appreciate him. Of course, they found their fan base. It'd be crazy to say that they're underrated. In fact, to a lot of people, they're overrated. But I challenge those people who find them overrated to actually go back and listen to this album in particular. Just try it. Don't go with any preconceived notions. See if it might be for you. It very well could be. You know, at first, I didn't know if I was going to really appreciate him. Then I gave him a chance, and I really loved what I heard. Then they started putting out music that I really didn't like. And some of it I loved again. Then they ended on a horrible note. But there are some good albums here, or at least some good songs worth checking out if nothing else. So just give it a shot. What, seriously, do you have to lose? Coming in at number 4 is the closest album that Testament will ever do to being death metal, Demonic. Not just featuring Gene Hoglan on drums, Chuck Billy unleashes his inner hellspawn and releases some of the most intoxicating, scary, and, I might as well just use the word, demonic vocals that you'll ever hear in the Testament discography. After the poor reception that Low got from so many people, feeling like it was almost alternative rock, that they were selling out, they decided to do a complete 180. In 97, when Reload and Load from Metallica were on the alternative charts, Testament decided to do the exact opposite and go into death metal. All you need to hear is a song like Demonic Refusal to see how heavy they were able to push themselves, and I'm sure they could have even gotten heavier than that. All of that in retrospective, I'm glad this is the heaviest that Testament ever got. I still appreciate the thrash metal side of the band, but I love the fact that they got so close to being a death metal band. What a different world it would be if they went from a thrash metal band to a death metal band. But if you want to hear Testament at their absolute heaviest, and you think they're Metallica ripoffs, which is just a weird notion that I keep seeing all the time, if you think they sold out in the 90s, if you think they're just fine, or if you've never checked them out before, and you like the heavy stuff, I cannot recommend Demonic enough. I know not a lot of diehard Testament fans like this album, but I do, so I'm giving this my seal of approval. Give it a shot. Coming in at number 3 is Dream Theater with Falling Into Infinity, the redheaded stepchild of the Dream Theater discography. Now, if you are a diehard Dream Theater fan like I am, or I was, depending on how you look at it, this album was manipulated by the label, and it was this album that became a watershed moment in Dream Theater's history, where after this album, to finish out their contract and all the way up to this day, every label that they were ever a part of, they said that they're going to do things their way. They're going to produce their albums, they're going to write the songs that they want to write, and there's going to be no manipulation from the label. And if you've ever checked out the Falling Into Infinity demos, which is available on streaming, and I highly recommend you check them out, you can see that there were so many huge differences in songs. Songs that were left out, songs that are changed, songs that were separated, songs that were put together, and the original Metropolis Part 2 Scenes from Memory just so happens to be on the original double disc version, before it became a full-on concept album. But with Falling Into Infinity, this is the closest thing that Dream Theater ever became to being a mainstream band. And that is such a weird thing to say. Their fourth album has a lot of pop elements going on. It feels like there were songs that were intentionally messed with to be able to create more of that mainstream flair. Desmond frickin' Child rewrote the song You, Not Me. I don't know. I don't think it's the worst thing that's ever happened to the band. James Labrie thinks the song New Millennium, which starts off the album, is the worst Dream Theater song, so, everyone's got their own different opinions. But I really do love listening to this album from start to finish. I love what could have happened with this album. This could have been an album that made them radio staples if things would have went in the right direction, and that's such a weird thing to say. And it's not all bad manipulation either. Doug Pinnick of King's X is on the song Lines in the Sand, and I love what he does on that song. I know some people hate it. I love it. And Trail of Tears is one of my favorite epics from Dream Theater. I don't think enough people talk about it, and it is that good. But if you feel that Dream Theater's too proggy for you, and maybe even too metal, which I don't know why you're checking out my YouTube channel if you think things are too metal, but just in case you want something a little lighter, I think this is an album that might actually get you into Dream Theater. You might still hate it, but you should give it a try. Coming in at number 2 is what many people regard as the best extreme metal album ever made. I feel differently. I feel like that'll be coming up in subsequent years. But at number 2, it is Strapping Young Lad with City. And especially for 1997, which I can't believe it's already been that long, this had to be the most jaw-dropping, awe-inspiring moments for anyone looking for heavy music in 1997. It's got pop elements, it's got brutal, extreme blast beat moments, it's got some of the most ridiculous screams you'll ever hear, it's got funny moments going on, it's got sound clips, it's got everything that you could possibly be looking for in a style like this. And it's still awe-inspiring to this day that something like this actually came out. And there's many reports that Devin Townsend said that he wanted to end Strapping Young Lad after this album because he felt like this was the highest point that SYL could ever get to. I personally disagree, but who am I to judge the man who created the most of the work? But this album is absolutely insane from start to finish, whether it slows down, goes to hyperspeed, whether it goes brutal, whether it goes a little more melodic. It's got everything and more in this very strange, nearly avant-garde style, but I love every second of it. And I truly love almost everything that Heavy Debbie has ever made. And this is a perfect example of why he is referred to as Heavy Debbie. And finally coming in at number 1 is my favorite non-concept album of all time. Wow, did that sound pretentious. But it's Devin Townsend with his debut album Ocean Machine Biomech. Unless you count Punky Brewster, which you are not wrong for doing so. This is almost a pop metal album. It's almost alternative metal. It's almost progressive metal. It's almost all of these different things in one. And you're not wrong for thinking anything other than it's great. This is a fantastic album. I love everything that's going on with this album. I love how poppy it gets. I love how heavy it gets. I love that little scream, that startling jump scare scream that happens at the end of the album, which you do not expect. I love the depth of music and how simple it is and how it just builds and builds and builds and builds. There's so much to love about this album. And it is kind of a hard album to get into, especially if you're looking for just one particular style at a time. Just like with Strapping Young Lad, which I just got done talking about, that's on the more extreme ends of things. This is the polar opposite, in a sense, but also it fits together so perfectly well. Ocean Machine, Biomech, let's just call it Ocean Machine, what a lot of people consider to be the best work Devin Townsend has ever done outside of Strapping Young Lad. And there's some people who thinks it's even better than Strapping Young Lad. If you want to know my thoughts on it, I talk about both albums and more when it comes to the Devin Townsend Backwards Marathon, which you can check out on this very channel. But regarding this, again, my favorite non-concept album of all time. Start to finish, just perfect. Everything about it I love so much. Whether it gets alternative rock, whether it gets alternative metal, whether it gets progressive rock or progressive metal, whether it gets poppy, whether it gets heavy. It's Heavy Debbie in a different light. And if you refuse to check out anything Devin Townsend has done in his solo material, I implore you, just give this album a shot. You might not like it, or you might instantly fall in love. You don't know unless you give it a try. And there you go, folks, my top 10 albums of 1997. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Was there some stuff you'd never heard of before? Or are there stuff that you think are absolute trash? Let me know in the comments below. Tell me, what are your favorite albums in 1997? Do you agree with any of mine? Do you disagree? Do you just want to give me crap for my own personal taste in music? All of that and more you can do down below. And of course, like I said in the beginning, like, comment, share, subscribe. Keep following everything I do with Heavy Debriefings. And until the next Top 10 Albums by Year video, backwards marathon, interview, review, or any other kind of video that I put up here on the Heavy Debriefings YouTube channel, this is Josh Runquist saying, see ya.